John chapter 18. The Bible reads, when Jesus had spoken these words, he went forth with his disciples over the brook Cedron, where was a garden, into which he entered and his disciples. And Judas also, which betrayed him, knew the place, for Jesus oft times he resorted there with his disciples. Judas then, having received a band of men officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, cometh thither with lanterns and torches and weapons. Jesus, therefore, knowing all things that should come upon him, went forth and said unto them, Whom seek ye? They answered him, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus saith unto them, I am he. And Judas also, which betrayed him, stood with them. As soon then as he had said unto them, I am he, they went backward and fell to the ground. Then asked he them again, Whom seek ye? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus answered, I have told you that I am he. If therefore ye seek me, let these go their way, that the same might be fulfilled which ye spake. Of them which thou gavest me have I lost none. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it, and smote the high priest's servant, and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Then said Jesus unto Peter, Put up thy sword into the sheath. Thy cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? Then the band and the captain and officers of the Jews took Jesus and bound him, and led them away to Annas first, for he was father-in-law of Caiaphas, which was now the high priest that same year. Now Caiaphas was he which gave counsel to the Jews, that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. And Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple that was known unto the high priest, and went in with Jesus into the palace of the high priest. But Peter stood at the door without. Then went out that other disciple, which was known unto the high priest, and spake unto her that kept the door, and brought in Peter. Then saith the damsel that kept the door unto Peter, Art not thou also one of the man's disciples? He saith, I am not. And the servant and officer stood there, who had made a fire of coals, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves. And Peter stood with them and warmed himself. The high priest then asked Jesus of his disciples and of his doctrine. Jesus answered him, I spake openly to the world. I ever taught in the synagogue and the temple, where the Jews always resort, and in secret have I said nothing. Why askest thou me? Ask them which heard me. What have I said unto them? Behold, they know what I said. And when he had thus spoken, one of the officers which stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, Answer thou the high priest so. Jesus answered him, If I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why smitest thou me? Now Annas has sent him bound unto Caiaphas the high priest. And Simon Peter stood and warmed himself. They said therefore unto him, Art not thou also one of his disciples? He denied it and said, I am not. One of the servants of the high priest, being his kinsman, whose ear Peter cut off, saith, Did not I see thee in the garden with him? Peter then denied again, and immediately the cock crew. Then they led Jesus from Caiaphas unto the hall of judgment. It was early, and they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Pilate then went out unto them, and said, What accusation bring ye against this man? They answered and said unto him, If you were not a malefactor, we would not have delivered him up unto thee. Then said Pilate unto them, Take ye him, and judge him according to your law. The Jews therefore said unto him, It is not lawful for us to put any man to death, that the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spake, signifying what death he should die. Then Pilate entered into the judgment hall again, and called Jesus, and said unto him, Art thou the king of the Jews? Jesus answered him, Sayest thou this thing of thyself, or did others tell thee of me? Pilate answered, Am I a Jew? Thine own nation and the chief priests have delivered thee unto me. What hast thou done? Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. Pilate therefore said unto him, Art thou a king then? Jesus answered, Thou sayest I am a king. To this end was I born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Everyone that is of the truth heareth my voice. Pilate saith unto him, What is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again unto the Jews, and saith unto them, I find in him no fault at all. But ye have a custom that I should release unto you one at the Passover. Will ye therefore that I release unto you the King of the Jews? Then cry they all again, saying, Not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber. Brother Ed, would you please pray for us?
Amen. We'll preach a Christmas message tonight out of this passage. Right there out of this passage in John 18. We're going to read a Christmas passage. Somebody like, I never heard anything about Christmas in that. It's about how to keep calm in chaos. It's a timely message for Christmas. This time of year, everybody's kind of going crazy. You've been to Walmart, and the lines are stupid crazy out the door, and the cashiers are just crazy stupid, and the people are just stupid. Anyways, but sometimes it's really easy to lose your mind or to lose your patience, to lose yourself in the chaos. And the Bible talks about it here. Well, think about how awesome, how knowing what Christ was, what he was going to do, and yet how he stayed calm in the chaos. And how he had self-control, and he had patience, and he kept his goodness. And he was going, of course, he was God, he was perfect, but it's still showing us an example that we can keep calm in chaos. We'll start here in the garden. We'll start where Jesus is here in the garden. Could you imagine here's Jesus in the garden, he's going to a prayer meeting, and then the soldiers show up, police kind of show up, here's in the garden, he's praying, and you have a police show up everywhere. The pastor of the church that I pastored in New York, he put on Twitter, the Facebook this past week that they got done with the church. They went outside, and there's like 12 or 14 police cars all decked out, all in riot, like all in like bulletproof vests, and like they're going to a call. I guess there was a big, there's a big raid or something they're trying to do, like a drug raid in the town. But going out there and seeing like 10 or 12 police officers after you leave church, and they're all locked and loaded, that can be kind of frightful. Could you imagine that? I remember when we were down at Countryside, and they called the sheriff on. They called the sheriff for the meeting there. And I'm like, could you imagine that? I mean, rumor gets out, hey, could you imagine having we had a police officer here for half of a service. So he's in and out of, slumber a little bit there. But having a police officer on hand to keep track of, having a police officer here to keep law and order is one thing, but here, they're the ones causing the chaos. Could you imagine here's Peter, James, and John, they're off a little while praying and falling asleep and having their, half-hearted prayer meeting, and Jesus is over there sweating, as it were, great drops of blood, and he comes back and he talks to the disciples, and all of a sudden, here comes the army. Here comes the temple guard coming in, and they're coming after him with like chasing an ogre. They're chasing after him with lanterns and torches and weapons. It says it right in verse number 3 that he's out there praying. He's having a praying time with them, and Judas knew where he was. And verse 3, Judas then, having received a band of men and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, cometh thither with lanterns and torches and weapons. Could you imagine that? I mean, they didn't come out with little water pistols. They came in with spears and staves, with clubs, with weapons, things that they're going to come and take the Lord by violence. Could you imagine that? And all this time, here this great big mob, this lynch mob is coming after him. Torches and lanterns and weapons, and they're coming after Christ, and he's like, kept calm. I mean, can you imagine how scary it must have been? It got so scary that, Peter just went off impetuous and took out a sword and started chopping body parts off. But Christ was in the garden. He kept himself calm, cool, and collected. And think about the holiday season, how hard it is for us to keep calm, cool, and collected. You think about, Sean and Savannah, they're fixing to have a wedding coming up in the next couple of months. Could you imagine the stress that's put on them for one stupid day, for one stupid ceremony, and all that takes place, and how they got a family member just going, family is here and family's there, and it's kind of the pressures of life on top of them as well, and just the pressure they could be under. Think of how much this. Here's Christ praying in the garden. He's with his disciples praying in the garden. And you read in Matthew chapter 26, where he's in the garden praying, and the people who he's brought to pray with him can't stay awake. They ate too much, and they can't stay awake. They're in the garden, and they're heavy, and they're falling asleep. And Jesus is saying, can you pray with me? Well, can't you watch and pray 1 hour? Can't you stay awake 1 hour and pray with me 1 hour? And Jesus is there in the garden, and all that takes place, Christ kept calm. Could you imagine having soldiers coming with a warrant for your arrest, coming to arrest you, and you've done nothing wrong? Could you imagine the personal anguish, the personal frustration that he must have had? That, look, he said here in verse number 5, Jesus, therefore, knowing all things that should come upon him, went forth and said unto them, Whom seek ye? What are you looking for? Who are you looking for? They answered him, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus said unto him, I am he. I am he. And he right there is in italics. When I think when the King James translators put he in italics, it's an honest reading. It's for the sake of our reading. But when he's saying here, I am, that's the same thing as you find in Exodus chapter 3 where he says, I am that I am Elohim, I am God. I am. Very easy. That's who I am. And then he says here, I am he. And Judas also, which betrayed him, stood with them. And as soon as he had said unto them, I am he, they went backward and fell to the ground. And then you see, they asked him again, saying, whom seek ye? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus answered, and I have told you that I am he. If I have told you that I am he. If therefore you seek me, let these go their way. And the prophecy is in chapter 17, that in which he spake of them which thou gavest me, I have lost none. He just said that in John chapter 17. Last week we read that. And then you see in chapter 10, Peter goes crazy, goes kung fu chopping. And then you see in verse number 11, then Jesus said unto Peter, put up a sword. And then you see where Jesus is like, I was with you in the temple. He says, I was with you in the temple. Why didn't you arrest me there? He says it later in the chapter. He says, why didn't you arrest me in the chapter? Why didn't you come get me in the temple when I had no one around me? Why didn't you come and arrest me when I was in the temple day and night? But no, you do it on the sly. You do it when people can't see the hypocrisy of what you're doing. But yet Christ kept calm. Christ kept calm. We saw videos of the soul winners there in Chandler getting arrested. They weren't very calm. There was a lot of panic and a lot of overtone, a lot of loss of control, and that's totally opposite. I'm not crushing them. I'm just saying that's a total different scenario of what Christ was. I mean, here they're putting this lady in handcuffs, and she's like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" And total panic. Christ didn't have total panic. And I'm not putting down that soul winner. I'm just saying, think of how awesome our example is of a Savior, that in all this was taking place, the Bible says, as a lamb before shears is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. That's our example of Christ. That's our example. And I'm not putting them down. I don't ever want to be arrested. I'm going to tell you a story. This is a true story, okay? So it's not really a story, it's a history lesson. I was 14 years old. We were on a church field trip, or church fellowship get-together thing, and we were in Oriskany Battlefield outside of Utica, New York, kind of like Oriskany, New York, Oriskany Falls, between Utica and Rome. I was out there with the church picnic type thing. We're going out there, and I was 14, and some of the kids are about 6, 7, 8, wanted to go play guns. And the adults didn't want to do them. I was like, I'll go play guns with them. I'll be the superhero teenager, and I'll be really cool, go play the guns with them. So I'm out there, and they're trying to chase me off. And I have one of those little Lone Ranger cap guns. You know what I'm talking about? Who knows what I'm talking about? You can raise your hand, doesn't hurt. Okay. So it's like you get the little Lone Ranger gun with a pearl handle, little orange tip. Well, the orange tip got popped off. So I'm walking down the road, and so we're going down this little trail. It's the Trail of Tears. And we're walking down this Trail of Tears, and it's there's rocks on this side, and there's a pond on this side, and there's some weeds around the brushes. And they're coming after me, and I was like, these guys are trying to play, bad guys and hunt me down, and like I was a bad guy, a Cowboys and Indians type thing. And back before Cowboys and Indians were bad to play. And we're out there playing back and forth, and I doubled back on them. I figured if I can get ahead of them, and I'll go up the side of the hill, and I can come back around, they can't see me come up the side of the hill because of the brushes. I can get up the side of the hill, I can come back around and ambush them. That was my plan. I got to the top of the ditch where it was like a 20-foot embankment. I got to the top of that, and I climbed over the guardrail, and I had the gun like this walking down the road, keeping out of the way, trying to duck, keep out of the way so I could get past these kids and ambush them. 2 cars passed me. One of those cars had a cell phone. They had cell phones back in the early days. I don't understand. They had a car phone. They called the police. I had 11 law enforcement officials or cars or vehicles, whatever, and a search copter searching after me with a little Lone Ranger cap gun. I kid you not, this truly happened. The police come and ask me what's going on. They asked me, hey, can I ask you a question? I said, sure. They said, you match your description of someone carrying a gun? And I'm like, well, yeah, I had a gun, but at this time the kids gave up looking for me, and they went playing something else, and I gave the gun to one of the kids, and the kids took off running with it, so they had to go back and find the gun. I show them the gun, that's what I had, and they said, okay. I was literally in the car. They had me in the back seat of the car. They had me reading my rights. They had me getting a hold of my parents, trying to find out. They had to get a hold of the pastor. I'm not saying anything. Talk to the pastor. Talk to Big J and Bill. Who's Big J and Bill? My friends who brought me here. Big J and Bill were neighbors that lived up the road. They called Terry that was the wife's name. We called her Bill. It's a long story. It's a joke. Whereas Big J was John and Terry Simpson. We called them up. They come down. They're laughing, busting a gut, because they're thinking it's funny and all this kind of stuff. And but I was literally a person of interest for like an hour and a half, searching after someone that fit my description, carrying a gun up and down the road. And they thought for sure I was this guy who, part of this small gang of people who had been vandalizing houses around the area, and I fit the description of someone that was walking down the road carrying a gun. Well, that was me. I was carrying a cap gun up and down the road, and I almost got arrested for that thing. It was back about, 93, 94? It was the most embarrassing thing, but it was so much chaos. They had canine units barking like crazy dogs. I mean, it was search copters everywhere. They had a SWAT team driving up and down the road. And I mean, I'm not kidding you. It was the most incredible, crazy thing in my life that's happened until I moved here. It was crazy. But here's Christ in the garden, and all these law officials, all these officers and lynch mob is out to get him, and yet he kept calm in the garden. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to lie. I was 14 years old and I peed my pants in the back of the car. I peed my pants in the back of that police car. I was scared to death. I didn't want to go to jail. I peed my pants. The funny part is my dad's listening he was listening on the radio. He worked as a dispatcher for AAA. And he's listening to the police blotter, and he's like, be on the lookout for such and such. He goes, hey, that's where the church activity is. And they started giving a description. He goes, hey, that sounds like Tim. And then they ran across my name over across the radio. They said, hey, that is Tim. And my dad's laughing the whole time over the dispatch because he could tell what happened going on. And all of a sudden, I sat there and I peed my pants in the back of the police car. I was so scared. I did not keep calm. I was scared as all get out. But could you imagine the soldiers coming to arrest Jesus with lanterns, torches, and weapons? And yet he kept calm. Could you imagine the betrayal of Judas Iscariot? The Bible says in verse number 2, and Judas also, which betrayed him, knew the place, for Jesus ofttimes resorted thither with his disciples. Judas then, having received a band of men and officers and the chief priests and Pharisees, come thither with lanterns and torches and weapons. And here it says that Judas was there with him in verse number 5. And Judas also, which betrayed him, stood with them. Didn't stand with Jesus, stood with them. And then Jesus says, hey, you came and betrayed me. You came and betrayed me. Here it is. Christ is looking at Judas. And you betrayed me with this. You betrayed the Son of Man with a kiss. Judas, how could you betray me? Here he stands face to face with the one who betrayed him. And he looks him in the eyes and he says, I'm going to kill you! No. Here is a friend betrays him. A friend turns his back on him. Someone who had walked with him for 3 years. 3.5 years walked with him. Ministered with him. Served with him. And he looks at his Judas in the face and says, you're betraying me? This is how you betray me? He was able to keep calm and all that. I mean, I've been betrayed by friends before, but I've never been betrayed to the place where I was going to be faced with a death sentence, where my friend turned me over and turned me over to the police or turned me over to law enforcement and had a kangaroo mock trial. I've never had a friend betray me to that extent. I've had people in my church betray me. I've had family members betray me. I've had friends betray me. I've had enemies, easily turn me over for things and blame me for things. But I've never had a friend do what the Bible says, my own familiar friend has lifted up his heel against me. That's what David prophesied about Christ and Judas. Could you imagine that? Yet he stayed calm. I don't know about you, but if I was face to face with someone who just ratted me out for something I wasn't going to do and trying to put me up the river, I don't know for sure I'll be super calm and collected. I ought to be, but Christ was. But I know my flesh. And I'm telling you what, it hurts bad enough when I get rejected by some pastors that I really don't care. I shouldn't really care one way or another, but it hurts because I've been rejected and I've been betrayed. But I'm supposed to, and that hurt. I still have to get over it sometimes. But for Christ to suffer what he suffered with one of his friends, his familiar friend, and yet he kept calm. What an example. What a Savior. I want to show you how Peter, or Cephas, he wasn't. We see Christ in the garden. We're going to see Cephas here, his overzealousness. Gabriel preached a sermon today at the nursing home about zeal. It was pretty good. And a lot of times, I tell you what, I get more going to the nursing homes than I do in church. Like, I don't have to hear myself preach. I can hear these guys preach. It's pretty good stuff. But in John chapter 18, we see Peter, or Cephas, he gets kind of overexcited here, and he goes to chopping. He gets out his sword and starts chopping body parts. He starts going after an ear. He had a little bit of Mike Tyson in him. He went after the ears. It says here in verse number 10, then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it, and smote the high priest's servant, and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Now, here's the thing. Peter was going to try and defend Jesus. But what a dumb thing to do. He sat back against an insurmountable amount of people. The Bible says there's men in the band, right? Men and soldiers with weapons and torches and torches, lanterns, and weapons. And he goes and takes out a sword and goes to chopping. Now, he didn't have a gun, but I'm pretty sure he had a gun. He would have shot off someone's toe. I mean, he was just going to town, man. He just whips it out. Just going to town at it. And Jesus says, put the sword away. And in another passage, he says, those that live by the sword must die by the sword. What are you doing? Put the sword away. I mean, couldn't you imagine? Here's all the chaos and all the craziness. And Peter starts whipping out his sword to start taking on the entire band. And he takes off the servant of the high priest's ear. He just starts lobbing, just going crazy on this. I think he was trying to go for a head, and he got an ear instead. I mean, he had a terrible aim. And he was always trying to hit truth and always got his foot stuck in his mouth. I mean, he had a terrible aim, worse than mine. And he was just going out of town. He got his sword and started chopping and going at it. But Christ says, hey, stop, Peter, put the sword away. Put the sword away. Verse number 11, put up the sword in the sheath. The cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? Now, there's people who say that Jesus, when he was sweating the great drops of blood, he took this cup of wrath and he drank it in the garden. He says, let this cup pass from me. And they actually believe, there's actually a guy named Al Lacey, he actually believes that Jesus took of the cup. And this cup was made it into being like human blood. And when he had only had plasma blood before, like it wasn't real blood. And when he took of that cup of the garden, he drank of it. And that's why he had the capillaries bust in his head. And that's why he started sweating great drops of blood. Well, the problem was the Bible says he sweat as it were great drops of blood. It wasn't actually drops of blood. And they say that he drank that cup in the garden. Well, Jesus is saying in this passage, I haven't drunk it yet. Look, he says here in verse number 11, the cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? I haven't, he's saying, I'm going to drink it. This is the cup that he's given me. I haven't drank it yet. I haven't drank of it yet. Take your Bibles, go to Luke chapter number 12. I believe this is where it's at, Luke chapter 12. How could Christ keep so calm? How could he keep so calm? It says in verse number 50, but I have a baptism to be baptized with. And how am I straitened till it be accomplished? He says, how am I straitened? I says, I'm going to be put in this hard press. I'm going to be put in this sorrow. I'm going to have this cup of wrath. I'm going to have this uncertainty. I'm going to have this cup of anguish with me until it's accomplished. And what is it talking about? It's talking about his death on the cross. Until this whole thing is done, the cost for his payment, for our payment on the cross. He wasn't asking God not to go to the cross. People, I've heard that said before too. Well, Jesus was praying, Father, not thy will, but thy will be done. Never, Christ was not praying for him not to go to the cross. Christ set his face as a flint, as though he was going to Jerusalem. He set his face to the cross. He knew that for this cause came I into the earth. He wasn't trying to second guess God and trying to back way himself out of the cross. He knew full well that he was going to the cross. He wasn't afraid of going to the cross. He knew full well the cost for our redemption, and our Savior went willingly. He wasn't trying to back out of it, and I'm tired of hearing Baptist preachers from the new IFB, old IFB, OPUF, all walks of Baptist preachers saying that Jesus Christ was dragging his feet and crying, being drugged to the cross and didn't want to go, but he submitted himself to the Father's will. Jesus Christ didn't want to take the cup, but he would take the cup. Not as though his will wanted to, but he said, nevertheless, not as I will, but thy will be done. He wasn't afraid to go to the cross. He knew full well that's why he was going to the cross. He wasn't asking God for a second way around not going to the cross. He knew full well he was going to go to the cross, and he said it for the joy that was set before him, despising the shame, endured the suffering of the cross, and is set down the right hand of God, the throne of God, the Bible says in Hebrews. So he wasn't kicking and screaming, saying, I don't want to go to the cross. I don't want to go. Like someone on death row going to the electric chair. He wasn't being carried by two guards, legs screaming and whining and crying at the doorpost, and them trying to, can you imagine a picture of Jesus going to the cross? That wasn't him. The Bible says he laid down his life. Didn't say they took it from him. He says, I laid down my life. That's a totally different picture from someone saying, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. No, that's a person saying, I'm willing to go even to the death of the cross, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame. Christ did it willingly. But I hear preachers get up there and try saying that Christ was trying to put his will under God's will. His will was already under God's will. He became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross, long before he left the splendors of heaven. There's no second guessing that, and I'm just fed up with preachers trying to spiritualize what Christ did in the garden. This cup was the cup of God's wrath, and he didn't want to take it. He understood the cup of God's wrath. I want to say something else too for the point of it. Jesus was arrested. It took 3 days from the time he was arrested, from the time he entered in Jerusalem to the time he was arrested. There was 3 days of man's wrath. That's where they came after him. They're trying to arrest him. They kept trying to arrest him. They kept trying to come after him. And then he was finally arrested and he was taken out of the garden. There was 3 days, and then he faced. And then during that time where he was beaten with a cat of nine tails, the crown of thorns was put upon his head. They blindfolded him and smacked him across the saying, "Prophesy, who hit you? If thou be the Son of God, if you're really the King of the Jews, if you're really some great teacher, tell me who smote you, who mocked and jeering and ridiculed and laughing at him." And then he went to the cross, and there he suffered the wrath of God on him. That's where he suffered the wrath of God. Don't negate the point that Jesus Christ endured much tribulation for us. It was separate from God's wrath. The wrath of man is not the wrath of God. There's a big difference in that. And Christ shows us that picture there too. But could you see Peter? Here he's there in the garden taking off swords and going off for body parts, just going off overzealous. But then here he is in the garden with an angry host, and willing to die for Christ. But then here he is in the enemy fire, standing around the enemy campfire, and he denies Christ. It's okay for him to die for Christ, but he won't live for Christ. Aren't you one of his? I saw you in the garden. Aren't you one of him? I know not the man. Aren't you one of his disciples? I swear I don't know him. And then the cock crew thrice. Well, cock crew twice. He denied Christ thrice. Remember that part in the garden? Here is Christ. He was overzealous, and he had no self-control. He was no filters. What he felt at the moment, there he was. He had no control of himself. And that's not what we're supposed to be like. In Christ, here's a parallel of Peter. Some people handle pressure very well. Some people don't. The fact is, it's not a matter of how I handle pressure, how Gabe handles pressure, how Josh handles pressure, or how Tim handles pressure. It's how we're supposed to handle pressure, because Christ showed us through Christ how we're supposed to handle pressure. The Bible says he opened not his mouth. The Bible says he was calm before his shears. But you see Peter here, he was at the enemy fire, chopping off body parts, and then you see him denying Christ. No restraint, no self-control. It's easy for us when there's chaos to lose control. It's easy for us. That's why we make battle plans beforehand. If anybody comes in here and acts really stupid, we have battle plans. We have an idea what we're going to do. If we're out soul winning and we're out door knocking and the police get called on us, the most spiritual person, the most spiritual level-headed person, it may not be me. The most spiritual level-headed person is going to be the spokesperson. And the one who can easily take care of matters and speak peaceably, and it's going to be the most mature, not necessarily the oldest, but the most mature, spiritual-minded person is going to sit there and is going to handle the situation. Everyone else is going to, one person's going to get their cell phone out and record it. The other person's going to, the rest of us are going to sit down and pray. That's the platform we are going to take at Friendship Baptist Church. But we don't need to have all at one time. We talked about this before. We're not going to have a bunch of nonsense, Tower of Babel, trying to straighten out nonsense. That only escalates the problem. We're not going to do that. We've already set a pattern beforehand, ahead of time for this. But here, Peter didn't have Jesus didn't have a FOP for being arrested. All right, now, here's a parable for you, okay? I'm going to give you the deeper meaning. Now, we're all alone, okay? We just fed the 5,000. Now, here's the thing, Daniel. When I get arrested, I want you to get out a scroll and a pen, an ink and scroll, okay? I want you to sketch down everything you hear said, okay? And the rest of you, that's not what Jesus said. He didn't have cell phones back then. But, they all sit down. He says, no, this is not what he's going to do. But he kept himself calm. He kept himself under control and restrained himself. Peter couldn't do that. Peter was like me and you, just kind of off it. How many times did we go through trouble in our life and we just act like Peter? I know, ladies, this is not you. I know you're cool, calm, and collected, and guys, we're cool, calm, and collected. No, when problems happen in our life, we're usually a basket of emotions. I know that's usually how it goes. My daughter, when my daughter gets upset, she's like a teapot. It's like, you take it off and it's still, and she's a tea kettle, man. It goes forever. Have fun editing that one. But that's how my daughter is, and I know me. When I come through sometimes, not every situation, but sometimes it takes me a while to bite my tongue and unravel. Last week was chaotic. Last week was chaos. And I'm sitting here trying to preach, and I got parents over there giggling with the kids and getting the kids wound up even more, and I'm trying to speak over toddlers, and I was just like, I sat in there. Gabe says I was pouting. I was sitting back there just done. I was spent. I had nothing left to give. I couldn't focus no more. I'm just sitting there like I'm just done. I was just done. I couldn't do no more. It took everything I could not to blow steam. But that was just a little bit of chaos. Nothing like being in the garden where there's staves and there's lanterns and torches and weapons coming after you. And yet Christ stayed calm. Look at the last part of it here. You see Christ at trial. Here's Jesus, and he's at trial. You find the physical assault. He's being physically assaulted. Let's see if I can find here what it says here. Then the band of the captain, verse 12, then the band and the captain of the officers of the Jews took Jesus and bound him. Evidently, the band has about 489 people. Somehow, I don't know how they got that number. I don't know. I think a band has got so many people, and I added some other people to it. Let's just say there was 489 people, okay? Somehow another number's there. I don't know how it all took place, but there's about 489 people. And they led him away to Annas first, for he was the father-in-law to Caiaphas, which was the high priest that same year. Now Caiaphas was he which gave counsel to the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. You can find that in John chapter 11, verse 47. And Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. Who was that disciple? That disciple was known unto the high priest, and he went in with Jesus into the palace of the high priest. Now, who was that other disciple? John never spoke to himself in the first person. He always spoke to himself in the third person. This is John that went in and followed along with Jesus. You find that in other passages. But Peter stood at the door without, then went out that other disciple, which was known of the high priest, and spake unto her that kept the door, and brought in Peter. So now John's trying to get Peter to come alongside. Peter is going to deny that he knows John and that he knows Jesus. That's pretty rough. That's pretty rough. Ever see someone in the grocery? We get this a lot. When we're down in New Philly, there's people from countryside that we see, but they go to the same Walmart there. And they'll see us, and they're like, they hide their face. Brother Kevin, he was here a couple weeks ago. Brother Kevin, he said he went in there one time. The lady just kind of dropped everything and just took off. And just kind of took off running the opposite way. And I'm like, seriously? It was kind of funny. It's kind of funny. But here he is. I mean, he didn't want to know who he was. Verse number 16, but Peter stood at the door without. I already read that. In verse number 17, then saith the damsel that kept the door unto Peter, art thou now also one of this man's disciples? He saith, I am not. hey, weren't you a Christian? I am not. Oh, okay. And the servants and officers stood there who had made a fire of coals, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves, and Peter stood with them and warmed themselves. Stood out there were the servants and the officers. The very ones that he went out and took out a sword and started chopping off body parts, he's standing with, warming himself at their fire. Oh, this is going to end well, Peter. Way to think things through. And it says in verse number 19, the high priest then asked Jesus of his disciples and of his doctrine. So now they're asking Jesus of his disciples and of the doctrine. Jesus answered him, I spake openly to the world. I ever taught in the synagogue and the temple where the Jews always resort, and in secret have I said nothing. And you find that Isaiah chapter 45, verse 19. You find a parallel to that. Verse number 21, why askest thou me? Ask them which heard me, what I have said unto them. Behold, they know what I said. And when he had thus spoken, one of the officers which stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, answer thou the high priest so? Jesus answered him, if I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why smitest thou me? Here's Jesus. He's there. He's in handcuffs. He's in handcuffs. And he's being answered and tried. And someone comes up, and I'm going to use Ed. This is no offense. He's going to use Ed, and he's going to take his palm of his hand. He goes, boom! Right beside the face of Ed. Right beside the face of Jesus. Right beside his face. Pfft. I'm telling you what. Someone smacks me, I'm going to have a really hard time turning the other cheek. I just have a really hard time doing that. Someone takes a sucker punch at me, I have a hard time just sitting there. I worked at a juvenile prison, and I had to restrain this one kid in the hallway. He was acting out, and I had to restrain him in the hallway, and I had to bring him upstairs to his room and kind of wait till the DO came to check him out. And he got mad, and he was up there, and he started kicking down his door. And I'm writing the incident report, and all the female staff, although there was like 3 other female staff, I was the only guy on the staff that day. And all 3 of them had walked out to to do whatever, and I was there with 48 kids. 48 kids in the doors, and this one, it was like, that's it, 48 kids to me. And I'm in there, and I'm writing out an incident report, and this kid jumps down, kind of busts out the door, slides down the railing, comes up, and I'm blindsides, man, it goes, boom, right up on the side of my face. I just took it. I sat there for a second. And I turned, and he punched me again, right square in the eye. Boom! I went to get up, and I'm like, whoa. And this guy, he pulled all his weight into it, man. He came hard. And I'm like, I don't want to. No. And I came up all like, whoa. And I was like, and I just went like, I got into a rage, man. I just kind of just started laughing. Like I was going to go beat him. I was just going to do my best to beat him. But I was blind in one eye because he don't pop one eye out, and he popped me in the other eye. So he punched me 3 times, and it got me in both eyes, and I'm like, but Christ, when he got slapped in the side of the face, he kept his cool. He answered him. He didn't cause a riot. They didn't have to stun him. They didn't have to use a stun gun. They didn't have to, no, there's nothing. He stayed calm. He was under control. He addressed the situation, but he kept under control. Look at the Pharisees' hypocrisy. I'm telling you what, when I hear something being done, I find out hypocrisy, I have a hard time. When I hear someone say something that's a lie, or someone's accusing me of something and what they're coming at me with a lie, I have a hard time biting my tongue. Because I'm like, seriously? You're going to come at me with lies and false truths? Really? That's what you're going to come at me with? Oh, I have a hard time biting my tongue. I have a hard time biting my tongue. I guess I'm trying to say I'm not Christ-like. So, but his accused, I have a hard time with this. But Jesus says, no. But Jesus says, but here you find the Pharisees, hypocrisy in all this. It says here in verse number 23, Jesus answered him, if I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why smitest thou me? Now Annas had sent him bound unto Caiaphas, the high priest. Annas was nobody but the father-in-law. He was nobody. He had no right to even arrest Jesus, to even have him there. It's false imprisonment. To have him bound where he was at, it was false imprisonment. There was no cause for having Jesus held where he was being held. There was no cause. It was illegal. And he's still being held there. And then they sent him over to Caiaphas' house. And Simon Peter stood and warmed himself. Oh, keep on going on to verse number 28. Then they led Jesus from Caiaphas into the hall of judgment. And it was early, and they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled. So it's not as long as I don't do it outwardly, it's okay, but inwardly I can be full of dead man's bones. Inwardly I'm breaking all the laws. Inwardly I'm being deceitful and dishonest and guilty of guilty of blood guiltiness. That's what I'm thinking of, blood guiltiness. And he's standing there with Jesus' blood literally on their hands, and they don't want to go into the temple to the judgment seat because we want to make sure we can have the Passover. We're going to have a church. We're going to have a church business meeting. Then we're going to have the Lord's Supper. Oh, we're going to go and have a great big fight, but we want to make sure we can have the Lord's Supper. So we're not going to go into we'll pull all the strings and press all the buttons, but we're not going to. That's what they're doing. Hypocrisy. I want to make sure I can take the Passover. I want to keep myself holy. Really? While you'll kill the Lord of glory? While you'll crucify the innocent one? Yeah, sure. Hypocrisy. When I see hypocrisy, I'm telling you I'd have a hard time biting my tongue. I just want to blare it out. A couple of weeks ago, Brother Gabe was talking about one of his coworkers, and they were talking about women's apparel, how the Bible says that women aren't supposed to wear what pertains to a man. And Gabriel said that his coworker started quoting a Greek word, saying that in Deuteronomy they use this Greek word which means such and such. Greek in the Old Testament, do tell how. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, serious? He told us about it. I'm like, he started speaking Greek, saying Greek words, this, that, and the other. I'm like, wait, Greek in Deuteronomy? Really? When I hear that, I just get sarcastic and sardonic, and I can point out their faults. The day is long, but I can't stand hypocrisy. I can't stand when someone tells me. There was a lady. I was working in the hospital. I worked in the dish room, and I was a dishwasher, pot washer, everything else under the sun. And this lady was a nutritionist, and she was probably 3'4" and about 5'5" around. She was a little short, fat thing, and she's telling. Look at me. She comes in. Tim, you need to go on a diet. And I was like, which one you're on? Because I don't want to go on that one for sure. I don't want to go on that one for sure. And then I got written up. I was like, whatever. But I don't like hypocrisy. I seriously can't stand hypocrisy. When I was in high school, when I was going to a Christian school briefly, I was in 7th grade. It wasn't high school. It was junior high. Mrs. Rhodes, my friend Chris, we went to school together. His mom came and helped off, set some of the tuition bill. She came and she was the monitor, and she was overlooking my handwriting. My handwriting is not good. I know it's not, but her handwriting was outright terrible. And she was like, I want you to copy these sentences off the board. And I'm like, I can't read it. I got my name and check on the board, which means detention. So instead of naming it, you lose 15, name with your board, you get in trouble. 15 minutes, a check means 15 points off lunch or recess, whatever. 2 checks means you got to stay 30 minutes after school. 3 checks means you're suspended for 3 days. This is not good. I got detention because I couldn't read names off my board. I told her, I said, I can't read your handwriting. And then she comes at me and she's like, she had coffee and kerosene breath. It was like the most nastiest breath in the world. And she came at me and she's like, you got to read this, what's on the board. And I'm like, Mrs. Rhodes, your breath reeks. And I got my name on check and double check on the board for that. But I was like, you're telling me, and then she wrote a note home to my mom and dad saying I was in trouble. I had detention served on Friday because of this and this and this. And my dad wrote back and says, I cannot read your handwriting. Please explain what you said. Great fun. But I can't stand hypocrisy. I can't stand the hypocrisy. I don't expect anybody here to don't judge me by you, judge me by the Bible. Right? Judge me by the Bible. But the Bible talks about it. Check the mote in your eye before you mess with the beam in my eye, or the beam in check yourself before you come address me on something. Please make sure you're right. Please make sure we're right on those things. And by the way, just because you're right doesn't mean you have to make a stink of it. Who cares if Rehoboam and Jeroboam weren't brothers? I mean, seriously. Nabat. Who cares if it's Nebat or yo-yo hat or whatever it is? Anyways, but you see the Pharisees' hypocrisy, yet Christ kept calm in all the hypocrisy. Then you see Pilate's blunder. You see Pilate's blunder. Look at verse number 30. Look at verse number. Go back to verse number 29. Then Pilate went out unto him and said, What accusation bring ye against this man? They answered and said unto him, If he were not a malefactor, we would have not delivered him unto thee. If he wasn't a criminal, we want to bring him to you. No. What did you bring him? What charge did you bring? That was good of Pilate to ask. Then they said in verse number 31, Then said Pilate unto them, Take ye him and judge him according to your law. Well, if he did something wrong, take it to your law. You can't tell me what he did, take him to your law. Well, that was a blunder right there, Pilate. You blundered that one kind of sort. Are you saying go prosecute an innocent man? Just don't bring him to a federal offense. It's just it's a state offense. It's not, it's not a it's a criminal offense, not a felony offense. So okay, thanks, Pilate. Appreciate that, idiot. Then it says in verse number 31, he says, Take him and judge him according to your law. The Jews therefore said unto him, It is not lawful for us to put any man to death. Well, gee willikers, you've already taken a man and broken the law by taking him at night in prison, in garden, overkill, abuse of force. You've already struck him when he was, struck him. You already put him in the judgment hall. You've already false imprisoned him without a charge, and now you want to put him to death for what was? Oh, but don't worry about it. You're still pure to have the Passover. You're okay to have the Passover. You're keeping yourself clear. Well, good for you, Jews. And then it says in verse number 31, Then said Pilate unto them, Take ye him and judge him according to your law. Verse number 32, That the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spake, signifying by what death he should die. They wanted a crucifixion. Verse number 33, Then Pilate entered into the judgment hall again and called Jesus and said unto him, Art thou the king of the Jews? Hey, well, okay, so now he's actually going to ask Jesus and give Jesus a kangaroo court trial. Now he's going to actually find out what Jesus did and get to the bottom of the matter to find out if Jesus was in fact a criminal. This was after he said, Go ahead and prosecute according to your law. Go ahead and prosecute according to your law. He hasn't done anything wrong. I haven't interrogated him yet. I haven't heard his side of the story. Let's just go ahead and prosecute him without having a defense. That's what Pilate did. I mean, and Jesus seeing this, and Jesus was like, can you imagine Jesus not ripping off this guy's head, not laying into him? Could you imagine hypocrisy here? We have a hard enough time with soul winning. Our response to being arrested is go flood Chandler with more soul winners. That's our response. 2 weeks before Christmas, that's our response. Nice. Sweet. 10 days before Christmas. That's sweet. Nice. Praise the Lord. Verse number 32. Verse number 3, excuse me. They asked, Are you king of the Jews? Jesus answered him, Sayest thou this thing of thyself, or did some others tell thee to thee? He says, I've never talked to you before in your life. Did you figure this out by yourself, or did someone tell you? Did you come to this conclusion that I was king of the Jews by yourself, or did someone accuse me of it? Well, the reason why he said it is because if there is an accuser, they're supposed to be there to accuse them with 2 or 3 witnesses. That's Roman law. We read that with Paul in chapter 24, 25, and 26 of Acts. That was Roman law. He should have had his accusers brought before him. And they didn't. The accusers weren't in the same room with Jesus. Then it says in verse number 35, Am I a Jew? Thine own nation and the chief priests have delivered thee unto thee. What hast thou done? Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. Pilate therefore said unto him, Art thou a king then? Jesus answered, Thou sayest that I'm a king. To this end was I born. Hey, there's Christmas. And for this cause came I into this world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Every one that is born of the truth heareth my voice. Pilate saith unto him, in context, who is Pilate? He's the judge that determines truth. Yes? He's the one that determines truth. He's the one that takes Roman law and Jewish law and finds the happy medium so there's not an uproar of the people, and yet keeps law and order from Rome overseeing him. He's the king. He's the ruler. He is the one overseeing this. He is the guy who's supposed to be the judge. He's supposed to know the law. He's supposed to know the truth. He's supposed to know what's crime and what's not. He's supposed to know what the truth is. Verse number 38, Pilate said unto him, What is truth? What is truth? Well, if you don't know, what are you doing judging me? That's what I would say. That's not what Christ said. He stayed calm even with Pilate's blunder. He was responsible determining the truth and didn't know what truth was. He's responsible for knowing the truth and didn't tell what truth was. I have a hard time with that. That's chaos. Could you imagine getting up before the judge? He's guilty, hang him. It's a parking ticket. I mean, could you imagine the total like offswing of this? Was there any crime in saying that he was king of the Jews? No. Was there any crime in him saying he was going to destroy the temple in 3 days, rise it up? No. But in context, he was talking about his body. He was not guilty of a crime. He was accused of a crime. He was not guilty of a crime. And Pilate sits back, the one who's supposed to be determined to decide the fate of this innocent man, and he says, what is truth? Well, what is law? I don't know. Well, you're in charge. You're the lawgiver. You're the one who's supposed to enforce the law. What do you mean you don't know what truth is? But Jesus didn't say that. Jesus just held his mouth, stayed quiet, stayed where it was. And then he went out unto the Jews and saith unto them, I found in him no fault at all. I find in him no fault at all. He's innocent in my book. But what do you do with the innocent person? You let him go. What does he do with the innocent person? I'm going to give you a choice. Do you want me to kill Jesus or kill Barabbas? Which one do you want to do? Kill Jesus or kill Barabbas? Which one should I release into you? And then they all cry out, release Barabbas, the one who causes the most problem, who's robbing from us, who's killing from us. He's a malefactor, he's a thief, he's a robber, he's an insubordinate person being placed in the prison. He's an insubordinate citizen. Let's take him over a righteous Jesus. And then look at chapter 19. Then Pilate therefore took Jesus, the innocent, who was found no fault in him at all, and scourged him. And the soldiers plaited a crown of thorns and put it on his head. And when they had put him on a purple robe, and said, Hail, King of the Jews, and they smote him with his hands. And then Pilate went forth again and said unto them, Behold, I bring him forth to you, that you may know that I find no fault in him. Well, so you beat him. The crown of thorns wasn't something they put in the head like a laurel wreath to the victor. They took thorns, 6 to 9 inch thorns, and they bashed it with a reed across into his head and it sunk into his skull, causing brain injury, fracturing his skull. A serious head wound. They beat him. They scourged him. They flogged him. They embarrassed him. And they set him out there and says, hey, he's innocent. Well, what do you do with the guilty person? By all means, what do you do with a guilty person? Do you not see the hypocrisy towards this? And then he says, I find no fault in him, none at all. And then Pilate says in verse number 5, Behold the man. Hey, he's the man. Look at him. This is the man. All beat up, bloodied, purple robe, and a total mockery. And then it says in verse number 7, the Jews answered him, verse number 6. And when the chief priests therefore and the officers saw him, they cried out, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. Pilate saith unto them, Take ye him and crucify him. I find no fault in him. Hey, I find no fault in him. Crucify him. Death sentence, kill him. Kill him, crucify him. So kill him with the most excruciating torture known to man at that time. Crucify him. He's innocent. I find no fault in him. But here, we talked about this morning with God and his judgment. Here's Jesus, the righteous judge, and he knows truth. He's going to judge us according to truth. And there's not going to be any person standing there before him that's going to be innocent of the charges that are brought before him that he's not going to punish. Those whose names are found and written in the Lamb's Book of Life, they're good to go. Those whose names are not found in the Lamb's Book of Life, they're going to be spending forever in hell. And there's not going to be one person sitting there saying, well, I didn't know. When Jesus is not going to be sitting back and saying, hey, what's truth? Oh, you were innocent. You trusted Christ, but I'm going to send you to hell anyway because you didn't do enough good works. Sure, Doka. Gotcha. Right. 100%. Idiot. No, the Bible says right here, Jesus is standing there and all this hypocrisy is going on. All this hypocrisy is going down. And Jesus sits back and says, nothing. Even all this chaos was going on, yet Jesus Christ kept calm during the chaos. I've got a lot of room to work on. We all do. Hey, Christmas time is coming. Right? Christmas is right on. This is Christmas time. Shoppers are going crazy. You're trying to get online orders and everything. You know what? Just remember, don't get caught up on the drama and keep calm at Christmas. We're going to go out sowing. We're going to be one day faced with the consequence of, quit preaching in Jesus' name, stop going soul winning, or obey the Bible. We got to seriously make some decisions, and we can make it ahead of time knowing that we're going to obey God rather than man, and no matter what it costs, and for the joy of the Father, we're going to do it. We're not going to have this fake this fake theology saying that Jesus kicked and screamed and didn't want to take the cup in the garden. No, Jesus willingly took that cup. Jesus willingly went and took our place. He willingly laid down his life for our sins. And no man taketh it from him. He said, I lay it down. He kept calm in all that. Why? Because the decision was made in eternity past, before the world began, that he would be slain for the sins, for my sin, for your sins, for the sins of the whole world, long before the foundations of the world. When you make a plan ahead of time, your plan that you make helps deviate reaction. It helps deviate how you react. When you can control how you're going to react, you can respond. Christ never reacted. He always responded. And I say this a lot, if I come up to Gabe and I slap him upside the face, he's going to react. He's going to react. Now, if I go and tell him, hey, Gabe, I'm going to come by and punch you in the arm, don't get mad. I go and punch him in the arm, he's not going to get mad because I pre-warned him. He's going to know not to react. But if I just come up and sucker punch him, he'll get mad. He'll make a video about me, hurt my feelings. No, but it was like, but Christ, he didn't react. He responded. Response is a pre-calculated decision. A reaction is involuntary. If I were to throw a songbook at Josh, he's going to react. It's a natural response, a natural reaction. If you're sleeping and I go and get a feather and I put it underneath your nose, it's a natural reaction. It's involuntary. But a reaction, a response, that is voluntary. It's pre-calculated. It's what you're going to do. That's right. Christ says to us. He said it in the Sermon on the Mount. If someone smites you in the mouth, someone smites thee, turn the other cheek also. If they take your cloak, give them takes your shirt, give them your cloak also. If the soul, they come and they carry walk a mile with them, offer them, go twain. What Christ was teaching was, hey, forgive, be tenderhearted, forgiving one another, be merciful. Those are all responses that Christ told us to have in our life long before, so we don't have to react. So today, before the chaos hits, make the decisions, make the reactions. Don't make the reactions. Make purposeful responses that you're going to make. Plan those things out ahead of time so you don't react, you respond. You know why we have fire drills? But they're teaching us not how to react, but how to respond. Do you know why we have schools? The schools have practicing nowadays mass shootings. Do you know why they're doing that? They're practicing how to respond rather than to react. Fire officials, police officers, ambulances, they don't react to a call, they respond to a call. Because they're being trained how to do these things ahead of time. So when we go to these things and our thought is to react, don't make it ahead of time now that you're not going to react, that you're going to respond. Calculate and remember who you are, what your purpose is, and what the glory is through the thing you're about to suffer. But that's what I found in this passage this week, thanking God for a Savior, because I tell you what, I fall short of that. And it's something that's something I can work on this week. That's something I can work on. So let's go ask let's ask God's blessing as we dismiss. And Brother Josh, if you would.